Well, hello, everybody. Max Lucado here, just checking in. May God bless you on this Monday. One day at a time, we're going to get through this, but we need to be careful. Did you know that tough times can lead to poor choices? This is one of the lessons that we learn in the story of Joseph. There's a cautionary tale. Maybe the last thing you want to hear today is a cautionary tale. Maybe your state of mind does not leave you open for a word of caution. If so, God bless you. God bless you. Let us know how we can pray for you today. Post that, and we'll make sure and do just that. But if you have a few minutes, probably 7 or 8, I'd like to remind you of a dramatic message from the life of Joseph. You know, this Old Testament character is a story for our time. He thrived in the midst of a global calamity. And his story shows us how we can do the same. We're beginning an online Bible study about the life of Joseph. It's really based on a book I wrote some years ago called You'll Get Through This. And I'd love for you to be a part of this online Bible study. You can sign up at maxlucado.com. Again, we're beginning that on May the 3rd. I'd love for you to be a part of that study. I think it'll be encouraging. Here's the backdrop of today's story. Joseph was about 27 years old when he crashed into, of all things, a sandbar of sexual temptation. You know, when his brothers sold him into slavery some 10 years earlier, I'm sure they were convinced that they had doomed him to a life of hard labor and early death. Instead, as it turns out, Joseph moved up the career ladder like a fireman after a cat. Potiphar promoted him to be top dog in the household. Consequently, he came to have clout in the area. He could spend money on behalf of Potiphar. He could send and receive. Merchants came to interact with him, and other people came to respect him. And most significantly for this story, the women began to notice him. Opening my Bible now to Genesis chapter 39. Now Joseph was handsome and well built. Joseph was a handsome and well built young man. Barely got that verse out. He was a Hollywood head turner, this guy. And it came to pass, I'm continuing to read, after all these things, that his master's wife cast longing eyes after him and said to him, "Come and lie with me." Did you ever expect a story like that to be in the Bible? The first lady of the household put the move on the Hebrew slave. And verse 10 says she courted him day after day. He had plenty of opportunities to consider her proposition. And you know what? I think he had plenty of, reasons to justify it. After all, she was married to the master. She's going to keep the whole thing quiet. What happens in the bedroom stays in the bedroom, right? And what's more, Joseph was probably lonely. He could use some relief, use some attention. And just think what he had been through. He had been rejected by his family, bought and sold like livestock twice. He's far from home, far from familiar surroundings, far from friends. I think he could have justified his choice. So can you. You're under a lot of stress. You have an uncertain future. You have an unknown outcome. And during times like this, justifications and rationalizations pop up like weeds after a spring rain. And no one would know. It's an unusual time. I can justify this. I'm only human. Can we talk? Can we talk candidly for a moment? You're in a form of Egypt right now, and it can be a cruddy time. It can be a cruddy place, and no one disagrees with that. But Egypt can also be the Petri dish for decisions that you someday regret. Don't make matters worse by doing something now that you'll regret once we get through all this. Learn a lesson from Joseph. Joseph went on high alert. Oh my goodness. When she dangled the bait, he refused. He gave the temptress no time. No time for a chit-chat, no attention, no hope. The scripture teaches us that he did not heed her. He did not heed her. I mean, when her number appeared on his cell phone, he didn't even take the call. And when she texted a question, he didn't even respond. He made it clear that he wasn't going to even tolerate the possibility of this engagement. He avoided her like the poisonous temptation that she was. He told her, he said, you know, Potiphar has committed all that he has to my hand. He believed that to lie with her would be to sin against his master Potiphar. But more importantly, he believed that to lie with her would be to sin against the master of his soul. You see, Joseph's primary concern was God. He even asked, how can I do this wickedness and sin against God? That's in verse 9. You see, the lesson we learn from this incident in the life of Joseph is that tough times tempt us to do bad things. But Joseph reminds us there's a simple principle. Just do what pleases God. Do what pleases God. Your friend hands you some marijuana. The internet provides pornography to watch. Then just ask yourself the question, how can I best please God? Do you remember that passage in the book of Psalms? Do what is right as a sacrifice to the Lord and trust Him. So there's our rule of thumb. Just do what pleases God. You'll never go wrong doing what is right. And be reminded of that warning from the book of 1 Peter. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, just looking for someone to devour. Jesus said he only comes to steal and kill and destroy. You got happiness, he wants to steal it. You discovered some joy, he wants to kill it. Do you love your spouse? Satan would love nothing more than to wreck your marriage. He is the enemy of your destiny, and he longs to be the destroyer of your soul. Don't let him. You turn to God. You turn to God, and you remind him that God is victorious over all that is evil. And the next time you smell the devil's stinky breath, here's a promise that you can tell him. Remind him of the promise that he is loath to hear. It's in the book of Romans, toward the end of the book, chapter 15. The God who brings peace will soon defeat Satan and give you power over him. Romans 16 and verse 20. Yeah, Satan may be vicious, but he's not victorious. Dear friend, these are unusual times, and you'll be tempted to do things during these times that are simply out of character with the person that you desire to be. May God give you strength. May you learn a lesson from the life of Joseph. Just do what pleases God. He'll get you through this, and you'll be better as a result.